Over the last 5 years, the US, the UK and other countries have written off billions of dollars in loans to the world's poorest countries in an attempt to make poverty history. But a small group of ruthless financiers, the vulture funds, have done their very best to divert that money into their own pockets. Greg Pallas reports from their latest target.
Welcome to Liberia in West Africa, where 80% of the people survive on less than $1 a day. Now, these people are being told that they have to pay $28 million to a bunch of financial speculators known as vulture funds. This was not supposed to happen.
Sometimes it falls upon a generation to be great, an end to the debt crisis for the poorest countries.
Over the past 5 years, Nelson Mandela led a very successful campaign to get rich nations to forgive the debt of poor nations. The West wrote off billions of dollars. Just as Britain, Europe, and America were about to pay off all of Liberia's debts, down swooped vultures who put their claws on the money. They were waving worthless sheets of paper, old debts that they had picked up for next to nothing. And now they were demanding that these Liberians pay them 10 times, even 100 times what the vultures themselves had paid for this worthless junk. There was outrage.
I would say to them, do you know you're causing babies to die all over Liberia? Do you know you are making it almost impossible for this country to get back on its feet?
The blackmail that's going on here is, if somebody doesn't pay us something that we want, we're going to hold up the development of the Liberian economy.
Where's their conscience? What do they say as a conscience? They don't care.
So who are these vultures? Vultures collect on debts of the poorest nations, but they never lent these poor countries any money at all. So how did these American speculators get their hands on Liberia's debts? We've come to the offices of Greylock Capital, big players in the industry. Greylock CEO Hans Humes tells us how he ended up with some of Liberia's debts.
I ended up buying a lot of the loans that we had in Liberia. When I called one of the banks that was going through a merger 13, 14 years ago, I said, hey, by the way, you're a lender to this African country. And the guy said, no, I'm not. A couple of days later, he said, you know what, you're right. We found this box in this warehouse that had files for all these loans. Do you want to buy all of them?
The reason Hans and other speculators were able to buy up Liberia's debt dirt cheap was war. In the 80s and 90s, Liberian warlords were chopping the country into bloody pieces, killing 1 in 10 Liberians. Humes and others were willing to wait until peace could be restored, but for some vultures, Liberia's misery was an opportunity. 4,500 miles away from the mayhem, they file a lawsuit in this courthouse in New York City. Now, Liberia didn't really have a government. It was run by a bunch of warlords under UN sanctions. Not surprisingly, Liberia doesn't show up in the courthouse, and they lose automatically when the judge issues this default judgment requiring the nation to pay $23 million. Who is behind this lawsuit? The key figure is Eric Herman, the owner of vulture fund FH International. And here he is at a chandelier-lit gala. Herman refused several requests to be interviewed, so we went to his office to ask why he sued war-torn Liberia. But his office seemed to have vanished.
Are they not there? They were there the other day. I'm sorry.
The nameplate's gone. There's someone in there. Hello?
Hi, can I help you guys?
Yeah, hi. Greg Pallas, BBC Television, Montreux Capital. It's Mr. Herman's firm.
Guys,
yes?
They don't want to be interviewed. They don't want to be seen. So we're going to have to ask you to leave the building.
Okay. And do you know why they took the sign off their door?
I have no clue.
But we had a clue. He was at his huge gated estate. But we couldn't get close. In the village of Demay, houses are a bit smaller. These Liberians are rebuilding their homes with mud bricks they made themselves. You're not paid?
Yes, just a volunteer.
You're volunteering?
Yeah.
For the community?
Yes.
Rebuilding Howa Murphy's home cost just $100 for supplies like cement. Howa is a young donut baker. Her grandfather was beaten to death in front of her during Liberia's long civil war, and every house in the village was destroyed. Now, nameless vultures are fighting to take $28 million from the Liberians, enough to rebuild 250,000 homes. The village elder says it's an unfair fight.
It's like someone that is amputated and you say, come and fight me. How can I fight? You tell me, you got 2 arms, I got no arms, and you expect me to fight you.
This is not a fight Liberians were expecting, because in 2007, all of Liberia's creditors, including Eric Herman, agreed to accept just 3 cents on the dollar for all that nation's debts.
Then it emerged that Eric Herman had quietly transferred his part of the debt to a secretive fund called HAMSA.
Under the 3-cent deal, Herman would have received $1 million. But now, HAMSA sued in London for more. And that's how Liberia ended up getting hit with this $28 million judgment. Insider Humes was stunned at what he considers such gaming of the debt reduction process.
All they're trying to do is exploit the system, hold the system hostage to get some sort of excessive returns.
Liberian diplomat Winston Tubman is infuriated.
We see a lot of this in the world. People who sell drugs to kids, people who give arms to child soldiers to go and do what they did here in Liberia. There are people who put making a buck above everything else.
Britain's parliament agrees. They voted last Friday to ban vultures from their courts.
I say bravo. We've been waiting for a parliament or an assembly to take this kind of hard decision to be able to bring these funds into reason.
Liberia's President, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf.
Maybe the U.S. Congress and maybe, some others in Europe will pick up this gauntlet and will follow the example of Britain and move that, because it's just so unfair to poor countries.
Today, with the end of war, things are looking up for Liberia. There's a surge in literacy. Hopes are rising, but it's all threatened by lawsuits by vultures. The president has a message for them.
Look, here's a country having 2 decades of turmoil, of death and destruction, now trying to find its way back, trying to give its young people a future. You should not be the one to become an obstacle towards the achievement of this. Have a conscience and give this country a break.
That was the President of Liberia there, ending Greg Palast's report.